What does it mean to take the Lord's name in vain? The Mormon Church would say that this means to say, "Oh my God." But that doesn't fit the definition of take in the scriptures and how it's used. Just think of the baptismal covenant wording. You promise to take his name upon you. Jesus uses the word take in this way when he tells us to take up our cross and follow him. To take the name of the Lord is to act for him, is to be his disciple and do his will. Now think about in vain. In vain doesn't mean disrespectfully or saying something bad about God. Vain means that you're propping yourself up. You have a high opinion of yourself and you're using flattery of yourself. Taking the Lord's name in vain means that I'm saying, I am speaking for the Lord and look at how great I am. And the second meaning, it produces no fruits. So this is not a true disciple of the Lord. It's somebody propping themselves up using God's name, but they're not a true disciple of God. This is why Jesus warned us that there will be many false prophets, but we shall know them by their fruits. So thinking about it in this context, taking the Lord's name in vain is really applicable to people who prop themselves up and say, I know what God wants for you. You should do this because God told me that that's what you should do. This is spiritual abuse. This commandment is specifically condemning spiritual abuse, the hypocrisy of people saying, I'm closer to God and I know what God wants for you. The Mormon Church teaches that there's a hierarchy of priesthood holders above us and that we need them in order to get to Christ. If we have a sin, we have to confess it to the bishop because he talks for Christ. He's the intermediary. And this comes from the Old Testament teachings where there was an intermediary in the temple and they would have to do these sacrifices to get closer to God. But when Christ came, he dismantled this. And the Apostle Paul taught that this law was the schoolmaster. It taught us how we could get in touch with Christ. And the goal is to graduate from school. He doesn't always want us under a schoolmaster or a bishop or some authority. But Christ himself is our authority, and if we are baptized in him, then his spirit lives in us, and we have access to him ourselves. So anyone telling you that you need them or their authority to get to Christ is breaking this commandment. They are taking the Lord's name in vain. All throughout Christ's ministry on earth, he taught us to come unto him directly, come unto Christ. He didn't say, go to my apostles or my disciples, go through all the checklists and see if you're worthy enough to come unto me. Because Jesus taught us to have an individual relationship with him. And the spiritual hypocrites and abusers will not be held blameless.